What are commodities? Typically in economics, we are taught that commodities are just another name for goods and resources. But in that case, why even have a word for it? Marx didn't think that definition made any sense. Instead, he proposed that commodities are comprised of three key things: use value, exchange value, and plain old value. Only through a combination of these three is a commodity formed. So what are these values? A use value is simply when an item or service fulfills some sort of want or need. For example, if I eat a sandwich, then the sandwich is being used to fulfill my hunger. Marx directly said,
"The commodity is first an external object, a thing which satisfies through its qualities human needs of one kind or another. The nature of these needs is irrelevant, whether their origin is in the stomach or in the fancy. We are also not concerned here with the manner in which the entity satisfies human need."
Or in other words, it doesn't matter how something is being used, it just matters that it's being used to satisfy a want. So if using an item means it has use value, then doesn't that mean that exchange value just means that it's able to be traded? Yes, exchange value can be seen as the price you pay to use an item or a service. Let's say I use my car to drive to work and I really like this car, then it does not have exchange value as I'm not planning on selling it. Now let's say I'm a car manufacturer, and as such I want to sell my cars. Now the fact that it's being traded for gives it exchange value. But that's not all. Exchange value can only exist as relative to other items or services. Let's say I live in a town that only makes hammers, eats hammers. Our homes are even made out of hammers. The only way for hammers to gain exchange value would be if someone offers another item in exchange for it. In this case, it may be a sickle. Only through this relation does a hammer gain an exchange value. It could be $10 for a nice meal or 10 yards of linen for one jacket. As long as there's a possible exchange, there's exchange value. Okay, so what is value then? Value, in Marxian terms, is a little complex, but put simply, it is the fact that someone has labored to create an item or service. Oftentimes, you'll hear this as labor value, or just value. The reason why this is needed is because if someone didn't work on something, how can you put a price on it? Items need to be produced and services need to be created, otherwise they won't exist. Marx even says,
Its value equates it to the product of simple labor, and therefore represents on its own merely a definite quantum of simple labor.
So value is just labor quantified, often in the physical form of a product or service. Now you may be thinking, but no, this can't be true. We sell things people didn't make all the time, like land. Well, this is correct. We need to ask ourselves why things like unmaintained land can even have a price tag. If no one worked to create the land, no one labored to clean up the area, and the only reason for the price is because someone somewhere says so, why do we believe that price to be valid in the first place? It's because of something known as commodity fetishism. Commodity fetishism does not refer to having a kink related to shopping or how sexual advertising is. Rather, it refers to the way in which we see items and services as having value. I briefly touched on this in my last video, but when I'm at a store and I see something costing, let's say, $10, I often won't think this item is equivalent to 30 minutes of my paid labor that I produced over the course of a 40-hour work week. Instead, I think, oh, it's $10. Even less likely that I'll think about the labor involved in creating the item itself. Let's just look at a can of soup, for example. The miners are used to get the tin. Farmers grow whatever is put into the can. Others collect and process red dye for labels. The graphic designers who work on the item to make the item even more appealing in the first place. The factory workers who put it all together. Or the people who transported the can of soup to the store and stocked it on the shelves. Most of the time, I'm just asking myself if it will be good soup or not what went into making the soup. This is what commodity fetishism is. It's how we as a society neglect to think about why something has value or costs what it does. We know when something feels overpriced, but we don't stop to think why we feel cheated when something costs a few dollars more. Through the fetishization of commodities, people are able to claim things have value when they don't and hide the value that workers are producing. So with all this being said, what are commodities really? They are just things society has created that are then sold and used by others. Maybe just calling them goods, like most economists do, is good enough. But sometimes it's worth digging a little deeper into what those terms mean.
United forever in friendship and labor, our mighty republics will ever